Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the program. It's Thursday, December 3rd. Coming to you live from our studio in Seoul, I'm Kim Mo-kyun. Before we get started, these are the stories we're following at the top of the hour. Nearly 500,000 test takers are taking the annual college entrance exam in South Korea today, and this time under extra precautions amid the COVID-19 pandemic. The White House COVID-19 task force has issued strong warnings to state governments, stressing that the risk of pandemic poses to all Americans is at a historic high. And South Korean lawmakers gave the green light to the government's $500 billion budget proposal for next year on Wednesday, making it the first time in 6 years the budget has been passed on time. We begin with the COVID-19 situation here in South Korea. Health authorities reported 540 new cases on Thursday. Authorities are on high alert over cluster infections, especially with the national college entrance exam being held today. Of the new cases, 516 were locally transmitted, most of which were in the Greater Seoul area. 24 cases were from overseas. The total number of cases nears the 36,000 mark. 3 more people have died of the virus, raising the death toll to 529. The British government has given the green light for distribution of the West's first ever approved COVID-19 vaccine as early as next week. Its fast-tracked vaccine approval, however, has been explicitly criticized by the EU for being authorized too quickly. Our Choi Min-jung reports.
The UK is set to begin distribution of Pfizer and BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine as soon as next week. This comes as the British government on Wednesday granted authorization following months of clinical trials conducted by the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency.
The vaccine will begin to be made available across the UK from next week. I would like to pay tribute to and to thank all those who have made this possible.
The Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization has also announced the specifics of the people who will be given first priority for the vaccination.
Residents in care homes for older adults and care home workers are the highest priority. Following that are those 80 years of age and above, alongside frontline healthcare and social care workers.
However, Britain's swift move was seen as unreasonable by many. The European Medicines Agency have bluntly criticized the UK's rapid approval of COVID-19 vaccines. The agency, responsible for the EU's COVID-19 vaccines approval, said its own procedure was more appropriate, as the longer process is based on more evidence and thorough examinations. An EU lawmaker has also been explicit in criticizing Britain by referring to the vaccine approval as hasty emergency marketing authorization. In response, the UK's medicines regulator insisted that no corners have been cut, reassuring the public that the vaccine is safe for use.
The public can be absolutely confident that every rigorous check has been done to reach the judgment that we reached, that the benefits far outweigh any risk.
Meanwhile, updates on Pfizer and BioNTech's vaccine authorization in the US will potentially be made by December 10th and December 29th in Europe. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The day of South Korea's annual college entrance exam, Suneung, has finally arrived. And right at this moment, nearly 500,000 people across the country are taking the make-or-break exam at local test centers. With COVID-19 still looming, though, the atmosphere looks quite different. Our Han Seung-woo went to one of the testing centers and files us this report.
South Korea's annual college entrance exam, Suneung, is now in session. Beyond these front gates of a high school in Seoul are hundreds of college hopefuls in classrooms, taking the exam of their lives. This year, the test is being held in chilly December, having been postponed 2 weeks due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Amid the third wave of the virus, over 490,000 people are taking the exam across the country in some 1,380 test centers nationwide. These include hospitals and treatment facilities where those infected are taking the test. Meanwhile, separate test sites are in operation for those in quarantine. Anyone at regular test centers who show symptoms will be able to take the exam in segregated classrooms, away from others, to prevent any possible outbreaks. Mask wearing is also mandatory throughout the exam, except during the identification process and when eating lunch. Despite the extra measures this year, one thing that hasn't changed is how much the once-in-a-year exam means to test takers and their parents.
Most importantly, I want my son to get good grades and enter the university of his dreams. He worked so hard to get here.
The 8 to 9 hour long exam will end at either 4:32 or 5:40 p.m., depending on how many subjects are taken by the test taker. And notification of test results will be delivered 2 days before Christmas on the 23rd. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
As the United States continues to grapple with COVID-19, the White House Task Force on the pandemic is highlighting the risk the virus poses to all Americans. It also urged state governments to implement stronger virus mitigation policies. Our Kim Hyo-sun has more.
The White House COVID-19 task force has issued strong warnings to state governments, stressing that the risk the pandemic poses to all Americans is at a historic high. Citing weekly reports distributed by the team to state governments, CNN reported that the task force is urging public health officials at the local level to intensify their response measures as the country is witnessing an extremely high COVID-19 baseline and an increasingly limited hospital capacity. The report added that a further post-Thanksgiving bump in cases will compromise patient care as well as medical services. It also noted how there are nearly 100,000 COVID-19 inpatients across the country, a threefold jump from 2 months ago. The task force also asked those over 65 or those with underlying illnesses to refrain from going to multi-use facilities, directing them to have their groceries and medications delivered to their homes. Pointing to the improvements in Europe, the team also explained that this was possible following strong public and private mitigation efforts implemented in many European countries. The dire warning comes as the Center for Disease Control predicted the U.S. could see up to between 150,000 and 200,000 new COVID-19 fatalities by early February. Saying the risk would remain significant for years to come, the CDC chief encouraged the use of intensified mitigation efforts. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has warned of a slowing economic recovery in some parts of the country due to recent spike in COVID-19 cases in the United States. A third of the Fed's regional branches report they've witnessed little or no economic growth. Our Kim Jae-hee has more details.
The economic recovery in some parts of the U.S. began to slow in November due to the recent surge in COVID-19 infections. This is according to the Federal Reserve's Beige Book report released on Wednesday. Most of Fed's 12 regional banks said they saw modest or moderate growth in recent weeks, but 4 reported they've witnessed little or no economic growth. 5 noted that economic activity remained below pre-pandemic levels for some sectors. The report also said while most districts reported that firms' economic outlook remained positive, the optimism has waned due to concerns about the pandemic, renewed lockdowns, as well as the termination of unemployment benefits. In particular, many districts reported that employment was growing more slowly, mainly in the Midwest, where the number of new patients has soared recently. Amid the concerns, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, along with U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, urged Congress to provide more fiscal relief to help businesses and families so they can survive the winter.
The rise in new COVID-19 cases, both here and abroad, is concerning and could prove challenging in the next few months.
I do believe we need more fiscal relief, and I think there's more work to be done. As I said in my testimony, I'd urge Congress to pass something quickly to make sure we get something done in this session.
The Beige Book report will be used during Fed's meeting in mid-December to discuss possible changes to U.S. interest rate policies. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
And turning our attention to South Korea's National Assembly, next year's budget proposal was passed by lawmakers late Wednesday. The roughly $500 billion bill was given the nod a matter of hours before the deadline, making it the first time in 6 years the budget has been greenlit on time. Our Choi Jang-yun reports.
The National Assembly passed the 2021 budget bill late Wednesday evening, just a few hours before the legal deadline.
Among the 287 lawmakers present, 249 voted in favour, 26 against, and 12 abstained. I pronounce the revised budget bill for 2021 approved.
It's the first time in 6 years that the National Assembly has passed a budget on time. The 2021 spending plan was finalized at 558 trillion won, some $500 billion, the biggest budget in South Korea's history. This is about $1.9 billion more than the government first proposed, marking the first time in 11 years that the budget was higher than the initial proposal. Included in the revised bill are some $2.7 billion for a third round of funds for small business owners and the self-employed who have been slammed by the resurgence of COVID-19. The aim is to provide the relief funds before the Lunar New Year holiday in early February next year. The revised bill also includes $814 million to purchase COVID-19 vaccines in order to secure vaccinations for 44 million people. Around $247 million will be channeled into expand care support, an extra $272 million more for helping the country achieve the government's 2050 net zero carbon emissions targets. Speaking at the session, the Prime Minister pledged to efficiently execute the budget in a responsible manner.
Considering the danger posed by the resurgence of COVID-19, the government will do its best to protect South Koreans from the virus and protect the economy. We will also build a bright future in which South Korea becomes a leading nation.
President Moon Jae-in also thanked the lawmakers, saying the 2021 budget is necessary for the country to overcome the COVID-19 crisis. Now that the bill has passed, the government will be able to bankroll its policies next year. The bipartisan effort to pass it on time is expected to help the country keep up the fight against COVID-19 and its impact, first by disbursing the third round of relief funds as soon as January. 최정윤, Arirang News.
A Hong Kong court has decided to send 3 prominent pro-democracy activists to jail for organizing and participating in a 2019 anti-government protest. They joined dozens of other anti-government figures who have been arrested since the introduction of a controversial national security law. Lee Kyung-eun has more.
3 pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong have been jailed. Among them, one of the most prominent activists, Joshua Wong. Wong has been sentenced to 13.5 months in prison for organizing an unlawful assembly. He's not new to jail, but the conviction is the toughest sentence handed down to any opposition figure this year. Fellow activists Agnes Chow and Ivan Lam received 10 and 7 months respectively. They face the same charge as Wong for joining thousands of protesters outside police headquarters in 2019 to demand the government withdraw a sin-scrapped extradition bill. Critics say these sentences point to China's increasingly aggressive crackdown on political opposition in Hong Kong, a claim that Beijing denies. This summer, China imposed a controversial national security law in Hong Kong, which grants sweeping power to the authorities to suppress dissent. Some residents echoed concerns over the law following news of the sentencing.
Is there no more freedom of speech right now? It's getting even worse in Hong Kong's current situation.
I think it is expected. It's because at the beginning of the year, the national security law has been reinforced. I think there could be just more and more like these cases.
Some public denouncement came from Amnesty International Hong Kong, who referred to the imprisoned activists as political victims.
I think that a lot of the prosecutions that we have seen ever since last year has been politically motivated in arresting leaders of the social movement.
Some 100 supporters gathered at the court calling for freedom. And democracy activists around the world are joining in the chorus as they worry liberty is being threatened in the global financial hub. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
Good morning. It's first time to have the Suneung College entrance exam taken in December since the Suneung system started back in 1994. So it's going to be the coldest Suneung day today. In fact, it's going to feel like temperatures are below freezing all day here in the capital. Most of the country had cold start to the day, and highs will also be a couple notches lower than yesterday afternoon, hovering below the seasonal norms. Daejeon and Gwangju will get up to 7 degrees. Busan and Jeju-do will have double-digit highs at 11 degrees this afternoon under fairly sunny skies in most parts of the country. But a dry weather advisory is in place for East Coast regions as well as the eastern parts of Seoul. But air quality will be decent nationwide. Then the dryness in the air will only get worse as there's no rain in store. Mostly sunny and dry conditions will persist along with colder than average temperatures. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that's a wrap up for us at the hour on Arirang News. We'll be back with more of the day's headlines at noon Korea time, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching and goodbye.